Hi everyone. As everyone gets in, we are still going to give a couple more minutes for our attendees to get in, and then we will start.
So that's not Josh Law. I'm Josh Law, but this would be Juan Jackson. Let's see. I wonder. I gave him my link, so
I think you can rename him if
I
you
was
click on it.
just wondering about that.
Yes, if you right click it, you can rename it.
It's not letting me.
Okay, I might be able to. You're good.
It'll let me drag and drop screens for people, but
What's the name?
Juan Jackson, Juan Jackson. Good morning, Juan.
There you go.
Good morning.
Perfect. Thanks, Audra.
Good morning.
Everybody's set.
Okay, if we have everyone on, we will go ahead and begin. Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining today's webinar, Five Peers, Five Stories. Today's presentation is hosted by Vital and is supported in part by the Alabama Department of Public Health, Bureau of Prevention, Promotion, and Support through a cooperative agreement with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as well as by the Alabama Department of Mental Health, the Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services, and Vital through a cooperative agreement within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Substance Use and Mental Health Services Administration. Funding includes the Overdose Data to Action and States Grant and the Transforming Lives Through Supported Employment Grant. Please visit vitalalabama.com for resources both for professionals and individuals in the community. You also can learn more information about the free Connect Alabama app on our website. All virtual attendees will be muted and your cameras will remain off through the session. If you have any questions for our speakers, please use the Q&A box. We'll be collecting those through the session and addressing them during a Q&A session at the end. If you experience any technical issues during the session, please put a message in the chat box to Vital or contact esearwright@ua.edu. That will also be put in the chat box as well. At this time, I will now turn it over to Josh Law, Program Manager for IPS Works.
Thanks, Leah. Let's begin with our first speaker, Charles Haslerig. Charles Haslerig is a certified peer specialist in both mental health and substance use. Mr. Charles worked at the Council on Substance Abuse for 7 years prior to joining Carastar Health. Over the past 6 years, he served in Carastar Health's Individual Placement and Support IPS program. providing support to individuals with serious mental illness and obtaining competitive employment of their choosing. Mr. Haslerig's personal lived experience in the recovery process has been instrumental in assisting the IPS team in developing a deeper understanding of the impact of substance use and mental health challenges, particularly as they relate to employment and recovery. His work continues to extend the reach of treatment through meaningful, person centered support for individuals on their path to recovery. In recognition of his dedication and impact, Mr. Charles has received several honors, including the 2023 Respect Award presented by the Alabama Institute for Recovery and the Alabama Office of Peer Programs, the 2024 Professional of the Year Award presented at the APSE Conference, and the 2025 IPS Advocate Lived Experience Award presented during the IPS International Learning Community Conference. Without further delay, Mr. Charles, please take it away.
Hello. Am I on?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Josh. My name is Charles. I am a person in long-term recovery. I've been clean since 1994 through the grace of God and through supportive programs. Uh, to start off with, I was born in Chicago. I was raised in a little town right outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee called Chickamauga, Georgia. I know y'all probably never heard of it because it's just a speck on the chart. My family owned a dairy in which we delivered milk to different places in Chattanooga and the surrounding area. Uh, I started working with my father delivering milk at 6 years old, which was which was a good thing because it instilled a work ethic in me that never left. I attended high school, and I received a scholarship to play football at Florida A&M. Uh, I admire anybody, student athletes, because I couldn't do both. So I eventually ended up uh, plucking out. And this was during the height of the Vietnam War in 1967. My draft notice was in the mail before I could get from Tallahassee to Chattanooga. So I was drafted into the Army. I later joined because I wanted to go airborne. I was a member of the 101st Airborne Division, stationed in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I was later transferred to Vietnam. Once I got to Vietnam, we were selected to be a special unit called a reactionary force. In other words, we were put in hot places all the time. I lost a lot of good friends. I had a lot of really, really horrifying, terrifying moments there. It impacted my life very much so. But the most profound thing that actually bothered me was when we came back and we landed in Seattle. They told us don't go outside of the airport with our uniforms on because you had protesters out there throwing rotten eggs at us, calling us baby killers. That pushed me over the edge. I was through with society. I was through with you guys. I was through with everything. I had lost the fear of death. And then when you do that, you become a very dangerous person. I slid in the underbelly of life. I used drugs, committed crimes. Uh, I was just a horrible person that I thought. I didn't have an idea that I was sick. I was suffering from post-traumatic stress. I was suffering from survivor guilt. I was suffering from traumatic experiences. There's only two places that a person that it was in the state of mind that I was in was either the graveyard or the penitentiary. God saw fit for me to go to the penitentiary to get my head together. Upon being incarcerated, I was on work release where I started working at a car dealership named Brubaker in Montgomery. And I was in the detail department and they made me the supervisor while I was incarcerated in work release. After getting out, they retained me. I was there for a short period of time and I took this small businessman course from Alabama State to run my own business because I had been indoctrinated in running my own business when I was a youth. I went there and I was able to obtain a minority grant and also a small businessman, and I started a car detailing business, which I was very successful in. I did that for the next 20 years. I got to the point where I could no longer physically do that type of work. And I was at a recovery meeting one time, and the guy said, "Man, we're starting this thing called peer support." And I said, "What in the world is peer support?" And they told me that's when you share your experience in the things that you've been through to help somebody else. And I said I would try that. And I started volunteering for the Council on Substance Abuse. I was later hired and I was working on various grants. When the grants ran out, I was told by my boss at the Council on Substance Abuse to apply for IPS position. I had no idea, Josh, of what IPS was, let alone an IPS program. Okay, I'll go with that. And later I found out that the IPS is a program that helps people with severe mental illness obtain competitive jobs. And I said, I can do that. Since that time, I've been able to help our consumers establish relationships with their families, allow them to uh, self-esteem. We have stories of people buying automobiles, getting apartments, getting married, and all those success stories. And I like to think I had a part in doing that with them. We are truly blessed to be in this profession. This is not a job. This is a calling. And I'm grateful to be here and thank y'all for allowing me to share my little piece of the rock with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Charles. As always, we love to hear from you. Okay, we will go ahead with our next speaker. And next up, we've got Miss Shannon Headley. Shannon Headley is a peer support specialist with Central Alabama Wellness. She currently works in the Individual Placement and Support IPS program, providing support to individuals with mental illness during their employment process. Shannon assists the IPS recipients and her team in helping find and obtain competitive employment for the recipient and a job of their choosing. Shannon's own lived experience with substance abuse and mental health provides the IPS team with a better understanding of the effects of substance use and mental health. By reflecting on her own life story and recovery, she's able to not only give hope, but also offer encouragement and support to the recipient, emphasizing the benefits and importance employment has in the recovery process. So without further delay, Ms. Shannon, you can take it away.
Good morning. Hi, my name is Shannon Headley, and I'm the youngest of two children, my parents' only daughter. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was enlisted in the Air Force. My dad's career had just begun after a year prior to my arrival, which took him away from home, leaving my mom alone to raise two children only 13 months apart. At the age of 4, my parents divorced. For the next 5 years, my dad would be MIA from our lives, or at least I have no memory of his presence. My mom would start a relationship with a new man. He was a jealous man and abusive towards my mother. During this time, we would move multiple times, making it hard to make friends and have a sense of belonging. I would later come to understand that this would play a factor in my life repeatedly in the coming years, being the root cause of my codependence, fear of abandonment, unhealthy relationships, and the feeling of inadequacy. At some point, my dad did come back into our lives, but because of his job in the military, he was not consistently present. Eventually, my mom left her abuser and we moved back to Opelika, Alabama, close to family and friends. During my preteen years, I felt socially inadequate and did not seem to have a set group of friends. I felt like I just did not belong, not fit in, and was easily intimidated by others. Not until I reached high school did I begin to make friends. However, for the better part of my ninth grade year, it was not a person, but rather a thing called alcohol that would develop the strongest bond with. It accepted me, made me comfortable in my own skin, and it helped me to engage with others and no longer fear rejection. Towards the end of my freshman year, I would befriend someone I had gone to school with since the sixth grade, but had not crossed paths with very much. We became inseparable, and her family welcomed me into their home with open arms. Her home life was everything mine was not. I stopped drinking and partying, and instead started going to church with her family. Seeds were planted in my life at this time that I did not even know about and would eventually help me to find my way out of the darkness. Unfortunately, our friendship would dissolve towards the end of our sophomore year, and I found myself turning to alcohol. By my senior year, I had added a new coping mechanism to my life, and it was called weed. Around 19, I met my first husband and the father of my two oldest children. I was engaged at 20 and found out at the age of 21 I was pregnant. We married a few months later, and in June of 1992, my life changed for what I thought would be for the better when I held my daughter for the first time. We purchased a home that same year and began to build a life together. In October of 1994, I would have my second child, which was a boy. After the birth of my son, I stopped doing anything that would interfere with me being a good wife, mother, provider for my children. I promised myself my children would never live in a broken home, always knowing the love and support of both parents. However, when my son turned 5, I made the decision to leave the marriage. Not long after the divorce, I met someone, and I soon learned he struggled with substance abuse from drugs that I knew nothing about, and much harder than anything I had ever done. That should have been a sign to run in the opposite direction, but for whatever reason, I thought I could save him and change him. The joke was on me. It would be me that would be changed and me that would need saving. On September 2nd, 1999, my 29th birthday, I would try methamphetamines for the first time, starting a love-hate relationship to me and the drug for over the next 20 plus years. I would spend the next 20 years on a roller coaster ride. I would go to jail for the first time in 2001, leaving behind a 5-month-old baby. I remained sober and clean for the next 6 years. I remarried, another recovering addict, and we had a son together. I wish this is where I said my addiction would end, but we both returned to drugs finally. After 15 years of marriage, the drugs destroyed everything we'd built together. I would fall many times during this time, but somehow pick myself back up, only to fall again. Besides the birth of my children, there are 2 dates that stand out to me the most. The day of addiction came like a thief in the night and took my life from me, and the day my life was restored, when I became clean and sober for what I claim will be the last time. That day is December 2nd, 2023. This day was not different than any other day, no life-changing events, but it was life-changing. For the first time since I began my journey as an addict, I made the choice on my own to get clean, not because I had to, not because the judge had told me to, or not because I was on probation, but because I wanted it. I craved it more than I craved alcohol or drugs. I no longer live in shame or feel like I have failed. I learned to establish boundaries and do not fear the loss of someone in my life if they do not respect those boundaries. I've learned to love myself, embrace each day with hope of what the future holds. One day at a time, I work to restore trust in relationships that have been damaged or broken by addiction. I no longer feel like an outsider looking into the lives of my children and grandchildren. I have peace knowing my parents can depend on me to be there for them in their golden years and even get to enjoy time with them as a family unit. I support groups like AA, NA, and Celebrate Recovery. They each provide me with the coping skills, strength, and hope in the recovery process, but the true glory goes to God. I'm thankful for the seeds that were planted in a 14-year-old girl all those years ago and the people that continue to water and weed my garden when I was too weak and powerless to do so. Like most recovering addicts, my goal is to continue to grow as an individual, but growth to me is not only personal growth, but spiritual growth as well. I currently work as a peer support specialist in the mental health in the IPS department, which stands for Individual Placement and Support. I use my own lived experience to support and encourage others on their journey of employment. The team I work with values my input, encourages me, and supports me as I continue to stay on my recovery journey. I have a purpose that is fulfilling and rewarding. I have accountability to not only myself, but to my team and those I provide a service to. Working with those still in recovery process is a reminder to myself how far I have come and how much I have achieved. My addiction tries to make me believe that I could never have a job that would bring meaning or purpose to my life. My recovery tells me I can achieve anything through hard work and commitment. I believe that knowledge is golden and we are not too old to learn. For that reason, I hope to return to school soon with my lived experience and continue to educate, and I will be able to better assist those I serve. I would like to add, when I took this job as an IPS, I received a phone call from one of the employment specialists. And she asked me, she says, do you think you would be interested? I knew what a peer was. I worked with peers in the past. And my first response was, I'm not sure I am. I'm happy to say I'm glad I did say, yes, I am. Supporting others in the recovery process is something that is very important. It's very needed. And it's very helpful when you're dealing with someone who's actually lived and experienced mental health and substance abuse, because you know the challenges that they face. You know that I'm trying to find the right word, I'm sorry. You know how easily they can become discouraged. And I'm so blessed to have this job that I can help others find their path. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Shannon. We appreciate that so much. Okay, we will now hear from our third speaker, Juan Jackson. Juan Q. Jackson is a dedicated peer support specialist with JBS Mental Health Authority, where he uses his lived experience to empower others on their recovery journeys. After being diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and depression, Juan sought treatment through the University of Alabama at Birmingham's intensive outpatient program. That experience became a turning point in his life, reshaping his mindset, strengthening his resilience, and redefining how he approaches both personal growth and professional purpose. Today, Juan channels that transformation into his work, offering hope, understanding, and practical support to individuals navigating mental health challenges. He is currently completing his studies at Faulkner University with an anticipated graduation date of June 29th, 2026. Following graduation, he plans to pursue graduate studies in counseling and rehabilitation, continuing his mission to advocate for recovery and holistic mental health care. Without further delay, Juan, take it away, please, sir.
Good morning. My name is Juan Jackson. I am a IPS peer support specialist here at JBS Mental Health Authority, Western. I was raised by my grandparents. My parents were there, but not really there for me. I often felt overlooked, standing in the background of my own family, present but unseen. I watched them give love to others, but no time and energy was given towards me. So as a child, you understand that. You understand the absence, but you just feel it more. So you feel it in quiet rooms, you feel it at school events, you feel it when you want to show somebody your report card, drawings, or even achievements, but you're not sure who's coming. There were moments when I questioned my net worth. I asked myself, why wasn't I enough? Why wasn't I chosen? Why wasn't I seen? But my grandparents saw me. They corrected me with patience. They loved me with consistency. They may not have everything financially, but they gave me something greater, which was stability. In their home, I learned respect. I learned resilience. I learned responsibility. I learned what it meant to show up every single day. Growing up that way shaped me. It made me independent at a young age. It made me observant. It made me self-reliant. It made me strong in ways I didn't even recognize until later. But it also left a quiet ache, the ache of wondering what would it feel like to be fully claimed. As I've grown, I come to understand something important. Sometimes adults carry their own struggles, their own limitations, their own unhealed wounds. That understanding doesn't erase the hurt, but it helps me release the blame I once placed on myself. Today, I don't see my story as abandonment. I see it as one of survival and love, just delivered differently than expected. I was raised by my grandparents. I was overlooked by my parents, but I never went unloved, which was most important. But one of my most defining moments of childhood happened when I was in the fifth grade. And excuse me for not knowing like proper medical terms, but something about hospitals kind of I disconnect from. But I broke my thigh in half. And I remember the pain of that shock. I was in the fifth grade. Everything was normal. And the next thing I heard sirens. I'm seeing bright hospital lights and unbearable weight of just something being very wrong. The pain came in waves. They was deep, sharp, consuming. I didn't know what it was. You know, I just knew something was severely wrong. That was when I was first introduced to morphine. I couldn't explain what it was. I just knew within minutes the sharp edges softened, the panic quieted, my body felt distant from the injury. And for the first time since the accident, I could breathe without bracing myself. And for a child who's already carrying emotional pain, feeling overlooked, searching for comfort, that relief felt bigger than physical. Morphine, it didn't just numb my leg, it numbed everything about me. The fear, the confusion, the loneliness, something in me registered that feeling. Later on, my thigh was healed, the bones mended, scars faded, but that moment taught me something powerful about pain. How quickly we reach for something, whatever makes it disappear, and how long it is to confuse relief with healing. By the time I was a senior in high school, I thought I understood pain. I had already met hospital walls and IV lines. I thought I knew what fragility felt like. But nothing prepared me for what happened when I was a senior. My left lung collapsed. And here I was back in the hospital again. When my lung collapsed, it started kind of subtle, tightness in my chest, shortness of breath. It kind of felt like my whole left side was just weighted down. Uh, when I found out that my lungs collapsed, everything was just unbelievable at that time. It was my senior year in high school. It should have been about freedom, me making plans for college, stepping into adulthood. Instead, I'm staring at ceiling walls in a hospital again. And there it was, morphine. This time I recognized it. That felt that the familiar warmth, the softening of the sharp pains, the way the pain just fade instead of the screaming I was doing. But this time I was older. I understood what it was. I understood how powerful that kind of relief could be when you're scared and struggling to breathe. So, yeah, eventually my left lung did heal. The tubes were removed, machines unplugged. I walked out of the hospital a little bit slower, but more aware. That experience just didn't test my body, it tested my resilience. It reminded me how vulnerable we are when our bodies fails us and how seductive escape can feel when suffering becomes overwhelming. So when I got to college, everything looked normal. College was fast. I was independent. I was surviving. I had made it through childhood. I had made it through the injuries in middle school. I made it through high school. So I told myself I was strong. I told myself I was fine. But, like I said, college is loud, emotional, mentally, the pressure of trying to belong to something, pressure to succeed, pressure to look like everything was okay. And underneath it all, I still hadn't really processed the feeling of overlooked, the pain that I suffered in middle school, the pain that I suffered in high school. So I started drinking. It started off casually, a weekend here. At first, it kind of felt harmless because alcohol, in social situations, it looks, I guess, normal because everybody's doing it. It quieted me from overthinking. It kind of softened my anxiety a little bit. Uh, I didn't notice when it stopped becoming occasional and start becoming a problem. I had spurts of success. I was in the band. I had made drum major. So I kind of put all that other stuff on the back burner. But eventually, if I had a hard day, I drank. If I had a lonely day, I drank. Memory surfaced, I drank. It slowly became more about escape more than about just drinking. It wasn't one dramatic rock bottom for me at first. It was gradual. By the time I left college, I met my wife. We got married. We had success in the beginning. We opened a company. I became a real estate agent, opened my own daycare. But on the inside, I was, still suffering from the the stuff that I had gone through prior to that. So I started drinking again. I was chasing relief. So my depression, the coping habits I had developed became a part of my environment. It became a part of my wife and children's environment. There were times physically I was there present, but emotionally I wasn't nowhere around. My mind wrestled with memories, anxiety humming in the background. My wife carried, worried she shouldn't have to have carried. My children kind of felt it too, because children are, believe it or not, perceptive. They sense tension, they feel emotional absence, even though they can't name it. And one day I realized that same feeling that I had, I had started placing that on my children. And that's just not being present. It was a repeating of a story that I didn't want to happen. So by the time I recognized it, by the time I just gathered the courage, I checked myself into UAB. So when I did that, I was just physically beat, emotionally beat. So when I walked into UAB, I know it was like, to me, I felt like I was admitting to defeat, but actually I chose to fight for myself. That when they first diagnosed me with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, Didn't know what it was really. I thought that only veterans, people who was in the army got stuff like that. And I was also diagnosed with depression. Hearing that was kind of devastating and relieving at the same time. Devastating because it meant it was real. Relieving because I finally had a name to what I was going through. PTS explained the triggers, the hypervigilance, the way the past sometimes felt present. Depression explained that heaviness I felt, the numbness, the exhaustion, sleep couldn't fix. For so long, I was weak that I just needed to try harder. That's how I felt. Rehabilitation changed that. I learned trauma doesn't disappear because of time. I learned numbing is a survival response, but isn't healing. I learned that healing is uncomfortable, it's not straight, it's slow, but possible. I completed UAB extensive treatment program within 90 days. And to be honest, that first year, I was what you would call a dry drunk. I wasn't drinking, but I wasn't moving. I was really in neutral. I had no clear definition. I had no plan. But therapy forced me to confront that, what I had buried. Group sessions showed me that I wasn't alone, and for the first time, I wasn't just pretending to be okay. I can say, hey, I'm not okay. And people listen. The diagnosis didn't define me, it just clarified me. It shifted my story from what's wrong with me to what happened to me. Rehabilitation didn't magically fix everything, but it gave me tools, it gave me awareness, it gave me responsibility, and it gave me more than one thing that I thought I would just never have, and it gave me that hope. And with that hope, I developed faith with that. I believe in the UAB program. I believe in the steps and the tools that they gave me to confront my PTSD and depression. I was all in. Strength is asking for help. It's not, okay to just survive in silence. It's not pretending to be unbreakable. It's not numbing pain. It's just staying present. And strength is choosing healing again and again. So I was raised by my grandparents. I survived injuries. I survived emotional wounds. I confronted addiction. I faced PTSD and depression. And today I stand as someone not defined by trauma, but someone who committed to breaking cycles. I have been with JBS now for 6 months. Excellent team. Uh, I enjoy what I do. This is for a long time. I've been searching for a job where not just going in to clock in, but we have a real committed team. The team there at JBS Western, we talk every day. And it's just they encourage to keep communications open, and that is continuing therapy for me. So, thank you guys for listening to my story.
Thank you so much, Juan. And now we will hear from our fourth speaker, Miss Antoinette Ware. Antoinette affectionately describes herself as a city woman with a country flair. She has resided in Alabama since June of 2024. Although she has no biological family in the city, she enjoys what she calls her chosen tribe, those peers, community members, and loved ones alike who have embraced her and immersed her into their respective families. Antoinette tirelessly works for those in underserved communities and moves daily to champion for the underdog. Today, she enjoys her role as a certified peer specialist with AltaPointe Health, helping others by sharing stories of her own experiences with a healing mind, body, and spirit. Without further delay, Miss Antoinette, please take it away.
Good morning again to everyone. Thank you again to all the speakers. My name is Antoinette. I'd like to share with you an excerpt from my book, Facing Shadows, Chasing Dreams. For me, growing up was both swift and complex. In my mind, in my small world, there was always a Molotov cocktail waiting to explode at any moment. Back then, I felt as if I was drowning in an ocean of all the latest stigmas, a single parent upbringing, an absentee father, our own drama-filled seasons, 1 through 4, I would call of substance abuse training. Beginning at the age of 5, I watched my grandmother shoot heroin in the kitchen, tying on the tourniquet and slapping her veins with company around as we were shoved into bathrooms or bedrooms to close the door to see where we were supposed to not see what we were already seeing. And it just kept repeating itself generation after generation. And then I had to have sexual trauma added on top of it. I was going to find a way to make everyone smile. I decided early on to make it my life's mission and then my life's purpose and meaning to take care of everyone. My assignment was to make everyone happy, and maybe that would make me happy too. By doing this, I would later come to realize that I'd become the greatest unknown actress I could be. Masking was learned very early on. Being a single parent came with challenges for my mom. With 3 children by the age of 20, the road ahead was never an independent straight line, never smooth as I remember it. We were happy children. Um, we had the best games around, like Twister, Clue, and Monopoly, which is if she was going to lose, my younger sister would flip over the game board. We were relatively well-mannered children and well-dressed too. Poor, of course, by economic standards back then, but my mother would never give up the fight to make sure we had what we needed. Despite not having all our psychological needs met, most of them were. I'm sorry, physiological needs met. I enjoyed walking in the rain, writing poetry, a love for classical music, and torturing my siblings with made up accents from French, German, and Irish speaking individuals. Yet I always felt an unexplainable, immense sense of loneliness and invisibility, trying desperately to be seen and to be heard, to disappear from life and numb my pain all at once. I was 11 years old when I made my first attempt to take my life. Being the eldest child came with challenges. So many of them had a lasting effect on that person I am today. I didn't realize how my siblings teasing me, the name callings, words that began it and ended with fat, children being children back then, I guess. But that contributed to my decades-long battle with self-esteem and body image. When I was a teenager, my dreams were always bigger than the world could hold, but I always kept them to myself. I was going to be an author and then a school teacher, professor, fly commercial planes even. I was scared and excited all at once. Somehow I still felt a little off, like no one understood me at all. By now, I'd learned to find solace in cooking. It no longer felt like a task I had to do as the eldest child. No matter what fun I tried to have, I still felt unworthy. Unworthy of happiness, unworthy of love, unworthy because my body, my choices were stripped from me earlier in life. And I felt as if I was forever damaged goods. This made for an exceedingly difficult relationships as I entered and traversed through college. For me, college proved to be a place of painful awareness of self. I was looking for love and friendships in all the wrong places and allowing myself to be taken advantage of in endless ways. I thought it was a space where things were scary and unkind. A pivotal point would come when I was faced with pregnancy at 19 and forced to deal with the aftermath of deciding to abort that child. Through all of that, I was blessed to leave college with 2 lifelong friends, despite my experiences. I started having what I call a meeting of the minds with myself in my early 20s. However, the so-called epiphany was spun out of an ultimatum that was made by a friend back then who insisted our relationship not continue unless I saw help for my constant sadness. Over the next 10 or so years, I intermittently made attempts, to address the elephants that seem to haunt my world. Internally battling modern medicine, mental health diagnoses, and the pray it away theory because that's what we were taught at a very young age. All of the why questions swirling in my head. Why am I here? Why am I sad all the time? Why can't I ever get it right? Why would I need to take medication to feel better? All those puzzlingly yet crucially important questions. By my 30s, I realized that healing couldn't begin unless I moved into that space willingly and walked into acceptance that I was different. Not crazy, not forever lost, not untreatable. Although early on, those were the negative words I sprouted to myself and many clinicians along the way. I started trying to face the issues, me against me. It wasn't me against the world. Once my eyes were open to the fact that this is work and not for the faint of heart, that's when healing really kicked in. I learned the hard way not to believe the hype. Healing is not a linear path, and sometimes it feels like working your way through a jungle or a maze. Imagine my surprise after finally getting it when I had my first setback, and then the second, and then the third. In August 2019, my second attempt at taking my life came. I didn't see that coming. Then in 2022, I would reach an enormous impasse, being extremely sleep deprived. As I sat and had a full-blown conversation with my then deceased father, I realized I had to call in professionals, and I voluntarily signed myself in the mental hospital for the first time. Ironically, it was the best sleep I'd had in a very long time. I am reminded of my father's last words directly to me, and I quote, "I'm afraid you're going to have a nervous breakdown and never come back," end quote. So I knew it was time to restructure some behaviors, switch it up, and as my friends say, KIM, keep it moving. What I once called dreams are now goals, strategic purpose goals, some big, some small, some short, some tall, but all of them meet, like finally finishing my book and securing a passport so I can take a trip to Europe or being a land and homeowner. I'd like to say that I understand now that healing is a journey and not a destination. I made up an acronym for myself called Press On. Place reasonable expectations on yourself and see your soul operating in newness. Thank you for listening to my story.
I love that, by the way. Press on. Thanks, Antoinette. Okay. And now we will hear from Miss Carla Bugg. Carla Bugg is a woman in long-term recovery. She has over 33 years in recovery, but only by the grace of God. She is also formerly justice involved and was incarcerated for 20 years on state and federal drug-related charges. She is also an advocate for individuals with a substance use disorder, as well as justice involvement. She's currently the Criminal Justice Services Coordinator for R.O.S.S. Carla is a faith-based support specialist. She serves on the executive board of directors at Not One More Alabama and Alethea House. She is a U.S. veteran as she served 6 years in the Air National Guard. Carla is now a member of the Veterans Justice Commission and the Council on Criminal Justice. Carla is a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ as she is the founder of FLO Outreach Ministry. She has 5 beautiful children and 4 adorable grandchildren, and she loves to sing. Carla believes that once you find your purpose, you find your life. Please take it away for us, Miss Carla.
Good morning. He's still working on me to make me what I ought to be. It took him just a week to make the moon and stars, the sun and the earth and Jupiter and Mars. How loving and patient he must be. He's still working on me. Hi, my name is Carla Bugg. I'm a woman in long-term recovery. And what that means is since 1992, I haven't had a drug or drink, but only by the grace of God. And it also means that today I live a life of purpose so that others may find hope. As you can see, my t-shirt says Hope Dealer, and that's what I'm all about. giving hope to others who are going through difficulties in life. I was raised in Gadsden, Alabama. I had 10, there were 10 of us. So I had 9 siblings. My father was a workaholic, alcoholic, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom. So, being that my mother had so many children, I don't remember her saying, I love you, or me sitting on her lap and, her talking to me while I was, getting my hair done or whatever. Because even when I got my hair done, it was assembly line, like, hurry up, be still, be quiet, move this way, uh, you know. And so I was in that assembly line with my siblings. And, but I found myself, I remember I longed for that approval and I longed for being accepted. My dad was a very, very, to me, he was a mean man. He was, and now that I'm an adult, I realize that he was doing the best that he could. He worked and he provided. I never remember a day being hungry, and he provided. But there were some things missing in my life, like, being called, my little girl, sweetie pie, things like that. So, and I did everything that I could to gain recognition in school. So I was a good student, A B student or A student most of the time. And so that's where I got my approval from, but not the way I wanted it. So as time went on in life, I became a cheerleader in high school. Ooh, that brought some attention. I could get out there and jump and do my little, and I was always at the top of the pyramid. So look at me. But that still wasn't enough because my brother played football and my dad would be so impressed by him making touchdown. But no one was impressed by the fact that I was sweating all night at the football game. As time went on, I found myself the people that my parents told me not to be around or come straight home from school or walk home from school. I catch a ride with some of the other, kids and get in the car with them and we go and start smoking marijuana and just just doing things that teenage kids do. And my brother, since he got the attention, I wanted to be around him a lot. So he used to sneak and steal daddy's old cigarette butts, those little Lucky Strikes. And if we didn't have enough marijuana to make a joint, we mix it in with it. And so if we wasn't high, we at least we were dizzy. And I can even remember my brother stealing one of my dad's Schlitz beers. And I would, whatever he drink or whatever he smoke, I'm right there with him. And I started feeling a relief, like, ooh, this felt good. It was warm. It felt, like I didn't have to worry about anything. Well, I got a little bit older. My dad told us in the house that he wasn't sending anybody else to college because after my two oldest siblings went to college, that was it. So I joined the National Guard. And so off I went to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. And so I said I was going to make a way for myself. And I didn't want to be full time. I wanted to be like National Guard and send myself to college. I think it was a way of showing my dad that I could do it. I could take care of myself. Well, after about a semester or two of being in college, that wasn't for me. That wasn't enough excitement, just reading and studying books and taking exams. So I found myself being around the older crowd. And back then, people were freebasing cocaine. And I got a little taste of it and it felt good. It was like, ooh. And I ran off to I left Alabama and I moved to California because I heard that in California people smoke marijuana out in public. I mean, it was just like liberating. And I just want to everybody knew my dad, and that was the fear I had. Fear of my dad. I mean, if word got back to him about anything about me, I was a nervous wreck. So I moved to California. When I moved to California, I just got free. I thought I did. Well, after being out there for a while, I found that freebasing community, and I met a guy, and I became pregnant, and so I had to move back to Alabama. Long story short, from there, my life started going downhill. I tried to keep it together for a while. Like when I moved back to Alabama, I was a bank teller in a credit union where everybody, visited. And, I tried to play normal. But after work, especially on the weekends, I found myself indulging more and more into the freebasing community. After a while, I couldn't keep up in the military. Just one weekend a month. I couldn't keep up. That would be the time that I would indulge mostly on the weekends. Well, so I got out of the military after experiencing some MST, military sexual trauma. I got out of the military, and my dad died. After my dad died, 1985, that was it. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm not afraid of anybody. Just sky's the limit. I'm just going to just clock out. And as you all know, with substance use comes criminal activity. So I began to get in trouble with the law here and there. And things started stacking up. And I found myself with a 15-year sentence in Julia Tutwiler Prison for women, three 15-year sentences, 45 years. But the judge reduced it to run them concurrent, and I received one 15-year sentence. So off I went to prison. Now, when I got to prison, this was an answer for me. This was a dream come true. Not the prison part, but to be free from the drugs, because at this time, I didn't like myself. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. There were periods in my family history where you can go back in the photo albums. I'm missing. I'm nowhere to be found because I'm here and there and everywhere. Cincinnati, California, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. I mean, everywhere. And in the midst of all of that happening, I birthed five children. Right before I went off to prison, I birthed a son. He was 1 month old when I left. So I decided while I was in prison that I was going to get my life together, because the prayers that I prayed while I would be walking up and down the streets, especially at night, was, God, if you can do anything with a wretch like me, come and get me. Take as long as you need to take, just as long as you turn me into the woman that you really called me to be. So there I was in prison, and I found NA and AA in prison. And so I embraced those platforms because I started liking who I was. I started loving who I was. And then at a point, I even started kind of liking who I was. I began to be able to look in the mirror at myself, started thinking that, hey, maybe there is hope. Well, in the back of, no, I'll take that back. In the front of my mind, I still had reservations that when I get out, I'm going to show them. Because some of the guys that I used to help sell drugs, and at that point, before I went to prison, I was cooking cocaine and to rock for a lot of people. Well, I'm going to show them because I got all the brains, right? I was smart in school. I knew how to cut it up. I knew how to weigh it. I knew that 28 grams equals all of that. So I'm going to show them that when they were using me, now I'm going to use them. But God had another plan. While I was in Tutwiler prison, after about 11 months, I was signed up for work release, for state work release. Well, it didn't work out like that. Within that 11 months, I was out on the road squad, and the federal marshals came to pick me up from the prison. I came in one day, they came and got me, and I was so glad to get out that heat. They said the federal marshals are here for you. Federal marshals? I'm doing the time for what I did. It's a mix up. Well, off I went to federal court. I came back to Tutwiler prison with a fresh 27 years, 324 months in federal prison. And I thought, okay, it'll be all right, because I heard that federal prison was better than state prison. Well, come to find out, Things didn't work out the way I thought it was going to work out. When I got back from federal court, the state of Alabama said, hey, we want 4 years of your time in the state, and then you can parole from state to federal. Wow. So I hunkered down and I began to study the Word of God like never before. And I found out that I sing a little bit. And so I started, tapping into the things that God had given me. Off I went to federal prison. While in federal prison, I found my purpose. And that purpose was to give people hope. People would come to me for prayer, Bible study. I started teaching Bible study. I started preaching out in the open fields. Sometimes down in Florida when I was in the federal camp, I started preaching out loud, in the air. Nobody there with me. I just felt like this is where I'm gonna be when I get out. I started practicing how my life would be. And I was even called crazy sometimes for some of the things I used to do, like wearing my combat boots, walking around like I had on high heel shoes, because I knew that one day God was going to allow me to get out. I was going to wear me some heels. Honey, I was going to look the best I could. I'm going to wear me a jacket. I'm going to put me some heels on. So I started practicing my life. Hey, even when they would shake us down and pat you down coming back from work and you'd have to get out of all of your clothes and everything, I started changing my mindset. Instead of me saying, every time I turn around, they want to shake me down, I started turning things around and started saying, hey, come get me. I heard that in the airports, you got to go through these machines, you got to turn around, you got to take your shoes off. So give me the practice now. So I began to change my perspective about everything that I was going through, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I started saying, hey, God, break me down into the woman that you called me to be. About the 7th year of my incarceration, everything went crazy. I started getting shook down in my room every time you turn around, getting in trouble. Even went to the hole, 27 days in the hole here, days in the hole there. I'm telling you, God was working on me. And at first I thought they hating on me, they messing with me. But things began to turn around as I began to change my perspective. Long story short, after 20 years, I was allowed to come home and I got out and I hit the ground running. And I'll never forget, there was a woman I used to get high with almost on a daily basis named Pam Butler. She came to see me at the Federal Halfway House and she said, hey, Carla, I'm trying to start this thing where, we could help people that's been through what we've been through. And it ended up being peer support and took my mind back to the prayers I prayed in prison. And the prayer I prayed was this: God, create me a position when I get out on purpose and in purpose, so that I won't have to work at the chicken plant. I won't have to do physical labor. I'm getting too old for this. I want to do something where I know what I'm doing. So peer support came about. I was in the first class on peer support training, and here I am. I'm doing my life on purpose and in purpose. It's a everyday ministry. I also founded a ministry while inside a prison called Flow, for love only, and it's based on John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. If you love, you'll give. And so that's what that ministry is. So every other Sunday, I go down on Tuscaloosa Avenue in Gaston, Alabama, where I used to walk the streets and sell drugs and sell my body. I go down there. I got this little karaoke machine. I go down there, I preach the gospel. Not only that, but I serve the community food, because I remember so many days and nights when I was so hungry, especially on Sunday. Some days I didn't know what day it was, but I always knew when it was Sunday. I would hate to be getting high on Saturday night, because Sunday morning would catch me. And when the sun came up on Sunday morning, that meant depression, that meant hunger, that meant being ignored as people were going to and from church, looking past me, walking on the street. So I made a vow to God that when I get out, I was going to make sure that somebody else didn't feel the way that I felt on Sunday morning. And so here I am today. It's so much more, but I just want to honor the time that I've been given today. I want to say thank you all for listening. And there is hope, but to God be the glory. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Carla. What a wonderful story. And thank you to all of our speakers. I hope our attendees recognize what a treat it has been to have all five of these guys together in the same place today. And what poise and strength that it takes to share something that is so inextricably yours. And these guys do it every day, all over the state, for people who need it the most. So we appreciate it. Thank you for your time. And right now, I will pass it back to Leah so she can take us into maybe a bit of Q&A.
Hi, everyone. So I am going to go ahead and close up. Thank you all for joining today, and thank you all to our speakers for your time and experiences. Once we confirm attendance, you will be emailed with a link to complete the evaluation. Please complete the evaluation by close of business on May 6th. Once you complete the evaluation, you will receive a certificate or contact verification form. Counseling CE certificates may look different than what you're accustomed to seeing. We work directly with the Alabama Board of Counseling to issue ABEC certificates. You'll not be receiving a certificate issued by the NBCC. If you have any questions regarding your certificate, please contact ecwright@ua.edu. Thank you again. If you haven't already, please visit vitalalabama.com to register for other webinars and learn more about our upcoming events. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.